morning. My name is Jean Patterson. I'm a member of the congregation, and I'm so pleased to welcome you all here this morning. Last night, we had a very successful auction, and I think we ought to give a round of applause and big thank you to Don Dickey, who chaired it this year. Also, thanks to so many of you who made contributions and who worked to make it a success. Also, to those who stayed late last night and helped set up for today. It probably seems like you hardly had a chance to go home. Now, don't forget, next week is daylight savings time. So spring forward and join us on time. At this point, we always like to welcome guests or visitors. If you brought a guest or if you're a visitor, please stand up, give us your name, and tell us where you're from. Anybody? Anybody? Yes. Welcome. We're glad you're with us today. I'm glad you're here, Bill, under trying circumstances. Anyone else? Well, glad you're with us. Those of you watching online, we're also glad you're with us and welcome. Those online won't be able to stay and join us for lunch, but visitors and guests, please join us for the Sunday Plus lunch following the service. You will be our guest. Just tell them you're visiting and you'll eat free today. I think that's everything today. There's quite a bit. Glad you're here.
Good morning and welcome. Wherever you are on your journey of the Spirit, you are welcome here and invited to pause for these few moments in gratitude for the connections and aspirations that make us human, to seek our hidden reckonings and measure our days against our values, to rest on the turning edge of time and recall what matters in the long run, to celebrate love and community and rededicate yourself to the promises of compassion, justice, and peace. The old prayer book reminds us that even in life, we are in death. And the poets counter that even in death, we are in life. This morning, I claim the privilege of my birthday to share with you some of my favorite works of literature from the poetry of Spoon River Anthology and the play Our Town. In both of these, the fictional dead speak their truth, that the living could not know or tell. Yet it is for our sake, who are still in the midst of life, that they break their silence, so that we might better appreciate what it means to live with authenticity and without regret. I want to thank our readers who have thoughtfully prepared to share these passages. We will invite you, the congregation, to join them in speaking one part in the second section. There are those of us here today rejoicing. There are those who come bearing deep sadness. Despite our differing circumstances, we share a common humanity. We hold one another in the bonds of covenant community, witnessing to the joy and the sorrow that give shape to our lives together. And we kindle this chalice flame once again as a beacon of hope, a light that summons us to our best selves, and a warmth that enlarges the circle of universal kinship. May it remind us that in our struggles, we are not alone, and that in the end, the only measure of our words and our deeds will be the love we leave behind when we're done.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I light this chalice for the inherent worth and dignity of every person.
Thank you, Sean. Good job for your first time. Now I invite you to rise as you are willing and able, and let us join together in the words of our community's covenant. Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And if you would remain risen for our opening hymn.
Dedicate our minds and hearts
a young Midwestern poet by the name of Edgar Lee Masters, published an anthology of short, free verse poetry in the form of a collection of epitaphs, ostensibly from the graves of Spoon River, a fictional town much like those in which he had grown up. Now beyond the reach of legal consequences or public opinion, the dead tell the stories of their lives as they understand them, often with several characters giving different interpretations of the same particular event. As their turn-of-the-century lives and relationships are revealed, their small town is seen as a place where virtue and vice, gentleness and violence, innocence and guilt, neighborliness and greed are interwoven in the full complexity of the human condition. Masters combines a cynic's realism about what people are with an idealist's belief in the good they might aspire to and the decency they sometimes achieve. Some of the voices speak of dashed hopes and unattained desires. Others give thanks for simple pleasures, dear loves, and satisfactions found in ordinary life. But tragic or comic, despicable or admirable, they come at last to the same resting place.
Where are Elmer, Herman, Bert, Tom, and Charlie?
The weak of will, the strong of arm.
The clown, the boozer, the fighter. All are sleeping on the hill.
One passed in a fever.
One was burned in a mine.
One was killed in a brawl.
One died in a jail.
One fell from a bridge, toiling for children and wife.
All are sleeping
on the hill.
sleeping on the hill.
Where are Ella, Kate, Mag, Lizzie, and Edith?
The tender heart, the simple soul.
The loud, the proud, the happy one.
All are sleeping on the hill.
Where's old Fiddler Jones, who played with life all his 90 years?
One died in shameful childbirth.
One of a thwarted love.
One at the hand of a brute in a brothel.
One of a broken pride in the search for heart's desire.
One after life in faraway London and Paris was brought to her little space by Ella and Kate and Mag.
All are sleeping on the hill.
Where is old Fiddler Jones, who played with life all his 90 years, raving the sleet with bared breast, drinking, rioting, thinking neither of wife nor kin, nor gold, nor love, nor heaven?
Where are Uncle Isaac and Aunt Emily, and old Townie Kincaid and Sven Houghton?
And Major Walker, who had talked with venerable men of the Revolution. All are sleeping on the hill.
They brought them dead sons from their war.
And daughters whom life had crushed.
And their children, fatherless, crying.
All are
sleeping
on
the hill.
I've studied many times the marble which was chiseled for me, a boat with a furled sail at rest in a harbor. In truth, it pictures not my destination, but my life. For love was offered me, and I shrank from its disillusionment. Sorrow knocked at my door, but I was afraid. Ambition called me, but I dreaded the chances. Yet all the while I hungered for meaning in my life, and now I know that we must lift the sail and catch the winds of destiny wherever they drive the boat. To put meaning in one's life may end in madness, but life without meaning is the torture of restlessness and vague desire. It's a boat longing for the sea, and yet afraid.
Mrs. Kessler. Mr. Kessler, you know, was in the Army, and he drew $6 a month as a pension. and stood on the corner talking politics and sat at home reading Grant's memoirs. And I supported the family by washing, learning the secrets of all the people, from their curtains, counterpanes, shirts, and skirts. For things that are new grow old at length. They're replaced with better or none at all. People are prospering or falling back, and rents and patches widen with time. No thread or needle can paste decay, and there are stains that baffle soap, and there are colors that run in spite of you, blame though you are for spoiling a dress. The laundress, life, knows all about it. Handkerchiefs and napery have their secrets. And I, who went to all the funerals held in Spoon River, swear I never saw a dead face without thinking it looked like something washed and ironed.
Franklin Jones. If I could have lived another year, I could have finished my flying machine and become rich and famous. Hence, it is fitting that the workman who tried to chisel a dove for me made it look more like a chicken. For what is it all but being hatched and running about the yard to the day of the block, save that a man has an angel's brain and sees the axe from the first.
Barney Haynesfeather. If the excursion train to Peoria had just been wrecked, I might have escaped with my life. Certainly, I should have escaped this place. But as it was, burned as well, they mistook me for John Allen, who was sent to the Hebrew cemetery at Chicago, and John for me, so I lie here. It was bad enough to run a clothing store in this town, but to be buried here, ugh.
Yebo. They got me into the Sunday school in Spoon River and tried to get me to drop Confucius for Jesus. I would have been no worse off if I'd tried to get them to drop Jesus for Confucius. For without any warning, as if it were a prank, and sneaking up behind me, Harry Wiley, the minister's son, caved my ribs into my lungs with a blow of his fist. Now I shall never sleep with my ancestors in Peking, and no children shall worship at my grave.
Reverend Abner Pete. I had no objection at all to selling my household effects at auction on the village square. It gave my beloved flock the chance to get something which had belonged to me for a memorial. But that trunk, which was struck off to Burkhard, the grog keeper, did you know it contained the manuscripts of a lifetime of sermons? And he burned them as waste paper.
Now, since the children are still with us, if you'd be willing to come up, I'd like to talk to you for a couple minutes about what we just heard. Hi, Rose, come on up. Great. All right, we got a few. So, how many of you know what a cemetery is? Yeah?
It's where people are buried.
Where people are buried, that's right. What's another word for a cemetery? Anybody know? What else might you call it? Yeah, a graveyard, right. So it could be a cemetery or a graveyard where people are buried. There was a cemetery quite near the church where I grew up, and I always thought it was a very beautiful place. It had nice gardens, it had a beautiful lake and weeping willows, and so I always thought that the place where we bury people is a place that we try to make beautiful. And all the way back through all of human history to very, very early people have tried to mark and make beautiful the places where they bury the folks that they love. And they can sometimes want to go there and visit those places, those graves, so that they can feel close to the people that they love who are dead. And often they'll try to put something beautiful there to remember those people. Sometimes you'll see in cemeteries or graveyards there'll be crosses if the people who are buried there were Christians, so that they have that symbol to remember them. And sometimes there's just what we call a headstone or a tombstone, and those can be carved or engraved. What are some of the things that they might carve or engrave on a tombstone? What are some things that are put on headstones? Do you know? Yeah.
Rest in peace.
There might be the saying, rest in peace. That's right. That's kind of a wish for the person who's there. What else what's one of the first things that would go on a tombstone? Yeah.
Their name?
Right, the person's name, so that we remember who it is. Who's the person that's buried there? What else might you put on a tombstone? Yeah.
The date when they died.
The date when they died, and what other date might you put on?
The date that they were born.
Right, the dates that they were born and died, so we remember when they lived. Anything else that you might put on a tombstone? What do you think? Yeah.
Maybe like a picture?
Sometimes you put pictures, sometimes of the person themselves, sometimes of other things that were important to them. A lot of them that I've seen, they'll say, like, who were they in the family, like husband or wife or mother or father. They'll put those words on. Sometimes, too, people will put like a poem or a prayer, something like rest in peace, or some words about that person and what was special about them, or what everybody wants to remember about them, or even what they think someone who didn't know that person but might wind up going by that grave, what they should know about that person, right? Or it might be a message from that person to other people, something that they always said when they were alive or something like that. And so some people have sometimes given a lot of thought to what they would like to have someone carve on their tombstone. And today in the service, we're reading some poems. We just read some poems about what people might have said on their tombstone if they were telling the real, honest-to-goodness truth about their lives and how they are remembered or how they want to be remembered. And we're doing that partly to help us think about how we might like to be remembered, what each of us would like to have said on our tombstone about who we were, what kind of person we were, so that we remember to act like that, so that it can be the truth, right, that we put on our tombstones about the kind of person we were. So there's two things I'd like you all to keep in mind, okay, as we think about death. One is, nobody knows exactly what happens after we die. Lots of people have lots of different ideas, but nobody knows for sure. And so your thoughts are as good as anybody else's about that. And the second thing that death does is it reminds us to live in the way that we want our lives to be remembered, because that's the only way to do it, right, is to live that way, and then people will know those things that you want them to think about you. So I'm going to invite you to think about what you might like your tombstone to say one day in the very far future, and maybe even to talk with your parents about that and about what they might like their tombstones to say too. Okay? All right. With that, we're going to send you off to your classes with song. Another author who has used the motif of the graveyard was the playwright Thornton Wilder in his well-known stage play, Our Town. Many of you will no doubt remember the fictional New England village of Grover's Corners, where Emily Webb and George Gibbs grow up next door to each other and fall in love in the most remarkably unremarkable way possible. Their lives could not be more ordinary until the third act, when Emily dies and finds herself taking a place among the other occupants of the local cemetery. The setting feels unfamiliar and awkward to her. She longs to return to the life that is all she has ever known. Indeed, she discovers that that yearning can take her back if she chooses to go. I invite the congregation to read the part of Emily's advisors among the dead, which will appear on the screen, until the scene shifts, and after that you'll have one more line at the very end.
It's true, isn't it? I can go and live back there again.
Yes, some.
But they soon come back here. It's not what you think it would be.
But I won't live over a sad day. I'll choose a happy one. I'll choose the day I first knew I loved George. Why should that be painful?
You not only live it, but you watch yourself living it.
But, yes?
And as you watch it, you see the thing that they, down there, never know. You see the future. You know what's going to happen afterwards.
But is that painful? Why?
It isn't wise. All we can do is just warn you. It won't be that you expect.
It's a thing I must know for myself. I'll choose a happy day anyway.
No. At least choose an unimportant day. Choose the least important day of your life. It will be important enough.
Then it can't be since I was married or since the baby was born. I can choose a birthday at least, can't I? I choose my 12th birthday.
February 11th, 1899, a Tuesday. Will begin at dawn. It had been snowing for several days. The sun is coming up.
Oh, there's Main Street. Why, that's Mr. Morgan's drugstore before he changed it. There's the livery stable. This is the town I knew as a little girl. Look, there's that old white fence that used to be around our house. I'd forgotten that. Oh, I love it so. Are they inside?
Yes. Your mother will be coming downstairs in a minute to make breakfast.
Will she?
Children, Wally, Emily, time to get up.
Mama, here I am. Oh, how young Mama looks. I didn't know Mama ever was that young.
You can come and dress by the kitchen fire, if you like, but hurry.
Mama, I can't find my blue hair ribbon anywhere.
Just open your eyes, dear, that's all. I laid it out for you special, on the dresser there. If it were a snake, it would bite you.
Yes.
Good morning, Mother.
Papa.
Did the paper have any mistakes in it?
None that I noticed. Coffee's ready when you want it. Charles, don't forget it's Emily's birthday. Did you remember to get her something?
Yes, I've got it here in my pocket.
Goodness sakes, I hope she likes what I got for her. I hunted hard enough for it. Children, hurry up.
Where's my girl? Where's my birthday girl?
Don't interrupt her now, Charles. You can see her at breakfast. She's slow enough as it is. Hurry up, children. It's 7 o'clock. Now I don't want to call you again.
Oh, I can't bear it. They're so young and beautiful. Why did they ever have to get old? Mama, I'm here. I'm grown up. I love you all, everything. I just can't look at everything hard enough. There's the butternut tree. There's Mr. Morgan's drugstore. And there's my high school, forever and ever and ever. There's the Congregational Church where I got married. Oh, dear.
Children, Emily, Wally.
Good morning, Mama.
Well, now, dear, a very happy birthday to my girl and many happy returns. There's some surprises waiting for you on the kitchen table.
Oh, Mama, you shouldn't have. I can't.
But birthday or no birthday, I want you to eat your breakfast good and slow. I want you to grow up and be a good, strong girl. Wally, wash yourself good. Everything's cold down here. Now that in the blue papers from your Aunt Carrie. And I reckon you can guess who brought the postcard album. I found it on the doorstep when I brought in the milk. George Gibbs. Must have come over in the cold pretty early. Right nice of him.
Oh, George, I'd forgotten about that.
Chew that bacon slow. It'll help keep you warm on a cold day.
Oh, Mama, just look at me. 1 minute, as though you really saw me. Mama, 14 years have gone by. I'm dead. Your grandmother, Mama, I married George Gibbs, Mama. Wally's dead, too. Oh, Mama, his appendix burst on a camping trip to North Conway. We all felt just terrible about it. Don't you remember? But just for a moment now, we're all together. Mama, just for a moment, we're happy. Let's look at one another.
That in the yellow paper is something I found in the attic among your grandmother's things. You're old enough to wear it now, and I thought you'd like it.
And this is from you, Mama. Why, it's just lovely. And it's just what I wanted. It's beautiful.
Well, I hope you like it. Hunt it all over. Your Aunt Nora couldn't find one in Concord, so I had to send all the way to Boston. Wally has something for you, too. He made it in manual training class, and he's very proud of it. Be sure you make a big fuss over it. Your father has a surprise for you, too. Don't know what it is myself. But here he comes.
Where's my girl? Where's my birthday girl?
I can't go on. Oh, it goes so fast. We don't have time to even look at one another. I didn't realize. So all that was going on, and we never noticed. Take me back, up the hill to my grave. But first, wait. One more look. Goodbye, world. Goodbye, Grover's Corners. Goodbye to clocks ticking, and Mama's sunflowers, and food and coffee, and new iron dresses and hot paths, and sleeping and waking up. Oh, Earth, you are too wonderful for anybody to realize you. Do any human beings ever realize life while they live it? Every minute?
No. The saints and the poets, maybe. They do some.
Choose the least important day of your life. It will be important enough. Those chatty folks sleeping on the hill in Spoon River, trying to persuade passersby to see beyond the conventional wisdom about who they were, think that their lives were identified with one notable incident or quality. Emily Webb Gibbs, from her grave in Grover's Corners, is concerned not with others' memories of her experiences, but with her own. It is possible, she discovers, to be a ghostly observer of any portion of her earthly life, and so to relive the existence that she is not yet ready to part with, having recently died in childbirth with her second baby. And yet, as her fellow occupants of the graveyard try to advise her, it's not what you'd think it would be. The knowledge of how things turn out for good and ill is as poignant as the unavailing regrets and indignations of Spoon River. The Greek historian Herodotus suggests that it is impossible to decide whether an individual's life has been happy until the end is known. That is to say, until that person has died. But Thornton Wilder invites us to consider the opposite view, that we are happy only in those moments when we are unaware of all that lies ahead, that the kind of foreknowledge that Emily brings with her to her 12th birthday makes the present so fraught with significance that none of us can bear it. Fortunately, he concludes, only the saints and the poets have that kind of awareness, and even they do not dwell in such a consciousness all the time. Yet, as a lifelong humanist with a fascination for spirituality, this has been my enduring ambition to live as a saint and a poet, with as much of that ability to realize life while they have it as I can tolerate. When I come back to visit my 12th or 20th or 63rd birthday, I yearn to see in myself not the obliviousness that Emily finds, but a suspicion at least that every word and gesture and person holds so much more meaning than we can ever unpack or acknowledge. To be aware, if not of the full sacred significance of all things, at least that it is there, and I am constantly missing much of it. Just look at me one moment as though you really saw me, Emily pleads. How hard is that? And yet it is the hardest thing we do, the most demanding way to live. It may be that the only way to get there is from the graveyard. We must make in imagination that journey, like Emily, like Ebenezer Scrooge and others, from life to death and back again, recognizing both our own mortality and that of everyone and everything we love. If you knew that the harsh, impatient words coming out of your mouth were the last thing you would ever say to your child, to your parent, to your spouse or your friend, would that shift your tone? What would it be like to relive that moment knowing it was the last you would have, but unable to change your own cluelessness? People sometimes ask me what I mean by spirituality as a non-theist. And it is just this: to not be clueless, to look at each other as though we truly saw, to realize life while we have it in all its poignancy, leaving as little as possible for regret when it is all done. Those artists of meaning, the saints and the poets, to live like that.
Today's offering is going to support the work of an amazing organizing collective called Black Lives of Unitarian Universalists, or BLUE for short. Some of you, I'm sure, know the history of the controversy that happened 50 years ago at the General Assembly in 1968. If you don't, I'd be glad to talk to you about it. I studied the history of that controversy during my time at seminary, and it is a fascinating exploration of power dynamics, a culture of fear, and a desire for inclusion. I will not boil down the history into one neat story, because there's not just one neat story. But I will tell you briefly about one lesson I learned. In a group that utilizes the democratic process, people are always free to caucus with identity groups, and sometimes that collecting and organizing of power threatens and scares people. Currently, Blue is working diligently to organize and support people of color in our UU movement. They are creating safer spaces for people of color to gather, share, and strategize ways of being that build toward inclusion, even in challenging contexts. They are expanding the role and visibility of people of color in our faith movement. Too often in our conversations about inclusion, we talk about ways that we can make room for them. But Blue is helping reframe the discussion back to celebrating the diversity that we already have. Here in Kansas City, we have such an amazing opportunity to learn more about and from Blue this coming April. At the end of the month, April, Blue will be here at All Souls hosting a revival called Reclaim. They'll be running a worship service specifically for people of color, followed by an invigorating multiracial and multicultural worship service for all, with the help of a powerful activist and leader, the Reverend Sekou. It is so important that we support Blue, not just in theory, but with our resources. Please give generously today as we support the important work of lifting up and celebrating voices that have sometimes been marginalized or ignored.
Will you join me now in the words of dedication for our offering? We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create a just and compassionate society. You might get the impression that everyone sleeping on the hill at Spoon River had a complaint. It is true that many speak of regrets, and lives that did not turn out as they had planned. Many faced into fates determined by forces far beyond their control. Yet others embraced the circumstances they found themselves in, however limited they were. Some found their wholeness in the beauty of nature, others in the joys of art, or the fulfillments of ordinary human connection. For me, the final word from Spoon River is always Lucinda Matlock's retort to the unsatisfied. Degenerate sons and daughters, life is too strong for you. It takes life to love life.
Herr Drummer. Do the boys and girls still go to Seavers for cider after school in late September? Or gather hazelnuts among the thickets on Aaron Hatfield's farm when the frosts begin? For many times with the laughing girls and boys played I among the road and over the hills when the sun was low and the air was cool, stopping to club the walnut tree standing leafless against a flaming west. Now, the smell of the autumn smoke and the dropping acorns and the echoes of the vales bring dreams of life. They hover over me. They question me. Where are those laughing comrades? How many are with me? How many in the old orchards along the way to Seavers and in the woods that overlook the quiet water?
Conrad Seaver. Not in that wasted garden where bodies are drawn into grass that feeds no flocks and into evergreens that bear no fruit. There, where along the shaded walks vain sighs are heard and vainer dreams are dreamed of close communion with disparted souls. But here, under the apple tree I loved and watched and pruned with gnarled hands in the long, long years. Here under the roots of the northern spy, to move in the chemic change and circle of life into the soil and into the flesh of the tree and into the living epitaphs of redder apples.
Anna Clute. Over and over, they used to ask me, while buying the wine or the beer, in Peoria first, later in Chicago, Denver, Frisco, New York, wherever I lived, how I happened to lead the life and what was the start of it. Well, I always told them, a silk dress, the promise of marriage from a rich man, was Lucius Atherton. But you know, that wasn't really it at all. Now, suppose a boy steals an apple from the tray at the grocery store, and they all begin to call him a thief. A thief, a thief, a thief, everywhere he goes. And he can't get work, and he can't get bread without stealing it. Why, that boy will steal. It's the way the people regard the theft of the apple that makes the boy what he is.
Wendell P. Boyd. They first charged me with disorderly conduct, there being no statute on blasphemy. Later, they locked me up as insane, where I was beaten to death by a Catholic guard. My offense was this. I said God lied to Adam and destined him to lead the life of a fool, ignorant that there is evil in the world as well as good. And when Adam outwitted God by eating the apple and saw through the lie, God drove him out of Eden to keep him from taking the fruit of immortal life. For Christ's sake, you sensible people, here's what God himself says about it in the book of Genesis. And the Lord God said, behold, the man is become as one of us. A little envy, you see, to know good and evil, the all is good lie exposed. And now lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. Therefore the Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden. The reason I believe God sacrificed his own son to get out of the wretched tangle is because it sounds just like him.
Margaret Fuller Slack. I would have been as great as George Eliot but for an untoward fate. For look at the photograph of me made by Pennywit, chin resting on hand and deep-set eyes, gray too, and far-searching. But there was the old problem. Should it be celibacy, matrimony, or unchastity? Then John Slack, the rich druggist, wooed me, luring me with the promise of leisure for my novel. And I married him, giving birth to 8 children, and had no time to write. It was all over for me anyway, when I ran the needle in my hand while washing the baby's things and died from lockjaw, an ironical death. Hear me, ambitious souls. Sex is the curse of life.
Fiddler Jones. The earth keeps some vibration going, there in your heart, and that is you. And if the people find you can fiddle, why, fiddle you must, for all your life. What do you see? A harvest of clover, or a meadow to walk through to the river? The winds in the corn, you rub your hands for beefs hereafter ready for market, or else you hear the rustle of skirts, like the girls when dancing at Little Grove. To Cooney Potter, a pillar of dust, or whirling leaves meant ruinous drought. They looked to me like redhead Sammy, stepping it off to Tora Lore. How could I till my 40 acres, not to speak of getting more? With a medley of horns, bassoons, and piccolos, stirred in my brain by crows and robins and the creak of a windmill, only these. And I never started to plow in my life that someone did not stop in the road and take me away to a dance or picnic. I ended up with 40 acres. I ended up with a broken fiddle and a broken laugh and 1,000 memories and not a single regret.
Lucinda Matlock. I went to the dances in Chandlerville and played Snap Out at Winchester. One time we changed partners, driving home in the moonlight of middle June. And then I found Davis. We were married and lived together for 70 years, enjoying, working, raising the 12 children, 8 of whom we lost. Ere I had reached the age of 60, I spun, I wove, I kept the house, I nursed the sick. I made the garden, and for holiday, rambled over the fields where sang the larks, and by Spoon River, gathering many a shell, and many a flower and medicinal weed. Shouting to the wooded hills, singing to the green valleys. At 96, I had lived enough. That is all. And passed to a sweet repose. What is this I hear of sorrow and weariness, anger, discontent, and drooping hopes? Degenerate sons and daughters, life is too strong for you. It takes life to love life.
My beloved colleague, Victoria Safford, writes this about her experience in a graveyard. In a cemetery once, an old one in New England, I found a strangely soothing epitaph. The name of the deceased and her dates had been scoured away by wind and rain, but there was a carving of a tree with roots and branches, a classic 19th century motif, and among them the words, "She attended well and faithfully to a few worthy things." At first, this seemed to me a little meager, a little stingy on the part of her survivors. But I wrote it down, and I've thought about it since, and now I can't imagine a more proud or satisfying legacy. She attended well and faithfully to a few worthy things. Every day I stand in danger of being struck by lightning and having the obituary in the local paper say for all the world to see, "She attended frantically and ineffectually to a great many unimportant, meaningless details." How do you want your obituary to read? He got all the dishes washed and dried before playing with his children in the evening. She balanced her checkbook with meticulous precision and never missed a day of work. Missed a lot of sunsets, missed a lot of love, missed a lot of risk, missed a lot, but her money was in order. She answered all her calls, all her email, all her voicemail, but along the way, she forgot to answer the call to service and compassion and forgiveness, first and foremost for herself. He gave and forgave sparingly, without radical intention, without passion or conviction. She could not or would not hear the calling of her heart. How will it read? How does it read? And if you had to name a few worthy things to which you attended well and faithfully, what, I wonder, would they be? Like my sister in ministry, I often find myself at risk of earning "she attended frantically and ineffectually to a great many meaningless details." It's such an easy trap to fall into. What about you? I know, you want to be donated, you want to be cremated, you want to be scattered. There isn't going to be some weathered stone 100 years from now pronouncing the essence of your life in a few graven words. It's out of fashion, that sort of thing. However, I think there could be worse exercises than contemplating what your headstone might say if it were to tell the truth about you. What are the secrets it might tell about you? And why are you hiding? What were the longings life never fulfilled for you? What were the opportunities you never seized? What pain shaped you? What were the human connections of love and hate that bound you? What simple joys and pleasures fed your spirit? Did your strivings ennoble you or make you bitter? Was your laughter generous or cynical? Did you hoard your gifts or share them with the world? And did the world receive them graciously? What mattered to you? And what were you grateful for? As far as I know, I'm not going to care what my tombstone, in the unlikely event that I ever have one, says when the time actually comes. It's only important now, while I still have the opportunity to become what I want it to represent. I know this, and yet I forget it constantly. We all do. We live as if there were no end, as if we had all the time in the world to squander, juggling frantically and ineffectually with a great many meaningless details. Instead, let me make this my birthday prayer, and all the year around too, that I might give my attention well and faithfully, in clarity of mind and awareness of heart, to a few worthy things, to covenant and community and justice, and you, my dearly beloved. May we look at each other moment by moment and really see. May we realize life while we have it, until the time comes when we too, like all those before us, are sleeping on the hill. Will you rise and join in our final hymn? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fires of commitment. For all these we carry in our minds and hearts until we are together again. And there is finally only one thing required of us, and that is to take life whole, the bright and dark together, to live the life that is given us with courage and humor and hope. We have such a little moment out of the vastness of time for all our wondering and loving. Therefore, let there be no half-heartedness. Rather, let the soul be ardent in its pain, in its yearning, in its praise. Then shall peace enfold our days, and glory shall not fade from our lives. Go in peace.